You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Tony Whatley, author of Side Hustle Millionaire, which is an Amazon #1 bestseller in the business marketing category. Tony's an entrepreneur, consultant, and speaker. His hobbies include travel, fitness, along with building and racing high-performance cars. Welcome, Tony. Thanks for joining us today.
Leah, Matt, glad to be here. Thank you for the invite, and I'm happy to be a guest on your show.
Thank you. Well, Tony, just so we're all on the same page, what does side hustle mean?
Side hustle is a play on two words. We always hear about the word hustle going out there in social media about just doing extra work. Well, a side hustle is technically a side business that you can operate while you have a full-time career.
Interesting. So sort of like something you can do at night after work or before you go into work, getting up early and doing something.
Correct. You hear a lot of people say, what do you do between your 9 to 5? Well, the side hustle is what you would do between your 5 to 9.
Right. So you had a couple of side hustles?
Yes. I've been doing side hustle businesses about 20 years now, and I've started 3 companies, and I've helped numerous other people start their own side businesses. So it's just something that I've always had a passion for. My target reader is really the professional type person that has a full-time career. And maybe they're just looking for more income or a higher lifestyle, or maybe they've hit that glass ceiling in their corporate career and they're just not going to climb anywhere on the financial ladder. So they start looking for alternatives to do things on the outside. Maybe it's involved with something they have a skill for, a passion for, or maybe they just want a hobby that pays for itself.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you're very knowledgeable about the side hustle business, but what made you decide to write a book?
I guess I've always been a teacher type personality, and I've always tried to share everything I know. And over the last 10 years after I sold my company to become the Side Hustle Millionaire, I've always been approached by people, and even in the corporate level, colleagues and friends, and they're always asking my advice on how to start a company. And I figured after 10 years of being asked that, I said, I just should sit down and write a book on this and have it out there so more people can get access to the information.
So what was the process like for writing the book?
My background in oil and gas, I'm a project manager. So basically I did anything like a project manager should. I created a schedule and blocked out time blocks on my schedule, and I guarded those just like anything else at a high priority.
So you designed the blocks for writing, or was it more for research, or what was your schedule like that you created?
I figured out that after writing the first 2 chapters, they were taking me about 4 or 5 hours total of writing time per chapter. And I knew that I had a target that I wanted my book to be easy to read, that someone could sit down on an airplane flight and read it. So I was kind of aiming for 120 pages because we found that books of about that length usually actually get finished. And the important thing about a book is if you're going to write it, you want readers to finish it. So I had a goal in mind that I worked backwards from, where I could say, I want, basically 8 to 10 chapters to fit 120 pages. And what is the value that I can create in that amount of time? And you do that by cutting out a lot of the fluff on your writing, and you just really try to get to the bones and remove some redundancy and just fluffy things from your book and try to really give value for every sentence that you write. And with that in mind, I kind of worked backwards, and then I just guarded that time. So I would sit down for about an hour at least. Sometimes I felt like I was in a mood and I'd write 1 to 3 hours. So it's really just blocking out writing time on your schedule, and then also making time for the strategy and also the pre-marketing before the book launch would happen.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like an interesting idea of writing a short book instead of spending a lot of time writing a long book, and then just giving everybody just the points that you want to give instead of the fluff. I like that idea. So did you have an editor help you with the book?
I hired an editor, Mike Fallett, at the end of probably the last 2 months of the writing portion, where he did the copy editing and he did the format editing for Kindle and also the paperback. And then he had a team of cover designers, and they submitted about 15 or 16 cover designs that we could go through. And all these actually help part of the marketing plan as well. So I didn't want us to learn that much about all the marketing and content side of things. I just wanted to create the book and hire the experts that has done that. So again, that's a time hack. It's always going to be a balance. I mean, nowadays there's ghostwriting and there's all these different things you can do, but I wanted to write it. I enjoy writing. I've written for magazines and such. I enjoy that part of the process, and I wanted it in my own words. But the editing and the cover design, all this, I had ideas for that, but I didn't want to learn how to do all that stuff. So it's always better to hire an expert if you can do that.
Sure.
And I think it's nice that they gave you so many options, 15 different options.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nice. And the book, I'm looking at the book cover right now. It is very nice. And anything with Benjamin Franklin, I would think people are like, oh, I'm going to pull that off and see what it is about.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin always has a way of making you curious.
Yes, yes.
That's true, yes.
So one tip that we would share on the book cover design is it has to look good as a thumbnail, a very tiny image on Amazon. So when you're going against a bunch of other books, you got to do something that people can read the title from a little small logo, and also something that builds curiosity. And nothing does it like Benjamin Franklin. So
I see that you used a nice thick font and made it nice and large, that it goes almost from edge to edge on the cover. And so I see what you mean. When you're scrolling through Amazon, that'll stand right out.
Yes, that's very important. And the subtitle's less important, but you want to grab their attention if you think about your book cover not as on a shelf, which is also important. Nowadays, it's all in digital format. So when someone's shopping on Amazon, they're just looking at these little 1-inch little squares. And if you're not grabbing their attention and you're not having something that's legible from that small of a size, then it's going to really hurt your effect in grabbing that attention.
Right. So did you write the book for the followers that you already had from your previous businesses, or were you looking for new people to read this book?
I would say I have a pretty large social following from the companies that I started. The very first company I started when I sold in 2007, we had about 150,000 registered members, and I sold that in 2007. But nowadays, that site's still around. There's over 300,000 registered members on that site. But I didn't have all those as followers. I've kind of carved my own niche and gone different directions with things, and that was largely the car community. But I knew that a lot of them supported my effort, and they kept up with me and the cars that I build, and they, just things that I'm always in the industry. But they did definitely step out and support it. I had a lot of them show up. That it was an unexpected amount of them just showed up and bought the book and supported it. That's also a testament of me giving to them for years and years and years, and giving all this value and content and help to people. So when it came time for me to ask for something, they really just came out of the woodworks and really showed some results.
That's wonderful.
I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about that. Give, and then ask for them to buy something. You can't just go out and expect to get a bunch of followers and expect them to buy something from you right away without you having given them something.
Exactly. And anyone that's listening that wants more information on that, I would check out Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. You've probably heard of it. And if not, that's a great book on just leading with a value proposition. And then when you get time to ask, which is the right hook, they're going to be more willing to help you out.
Right. Yep. I've read the book. It's a great book. I recommend it too.
Working with the editor, did you feel like you had a voice, or did you feel like sometimes the book was being taken over?
There was very little editing that was done for the flow or the content of the book. I did a pretty good job, I feel, on the writing part of that. Like I said, I've had former experience doing that, so I was comfortable writing. And actually, the way I write my books is like I'm having a conversation with a good friend over a couple beers. Okay. So it's something that I hope that the readers feel like there's a connection there, like you're speaking directly to them. And I think that's a good style that I enjoy in other books as well.
You had the book edited and you had it cover designed and your editor put it on Kindle. What did you do about marketing and letting all your followers know that the book was available?
Well, Matt, my marketing actually started 6 months before the launch date. So it's a strategy that I'd like to share, that if you get your social media crowd, if you have, whether that's your normal Facebook profile, your Instagram, and you get these people involved in the process from day one. And it also holds you accountable, because when you come out and go, hey, if you guys know me really well, what would you like to learn from me? And then you start getting ideas, even though you may have a pretty good idea of the book you're going to write. It's interesting to see the comments that come in from that, because you actually may get some other ideas. Maybe you'll find an idea that's actually better than the one you had. Like, wow, I should write a book on that. But so you get them involved, and you have almost like they feel like they're buying into the process, and then you pick one of those. It's almost like miniature contests that you would almost have, like a poll.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that started, and it also like the accountability part, because when you put it out there that you're going to write a book, and if you're the type of person that keeps your word and you do what other people, what you say you're going to do, now it's kind of lights a fire under you. Like, okay, now I need to really actually write this book. Otherwise I'm going to be another one of those people that just says I'm going to do something and doesn't do anything.
Right.
So now that gives you some motivation to start the writing process and blocking up the calendar we talked about. But also along the way, I'm dropping little nuggets. Hey, I finished chapter 1. Here's an excerpt. What do you think?
Oh, okay.
Share a couple paragraphs, and they're like, oh, that's cool, man. Keep going. And so every time you hit a little chapter, you can kind of just show them a couple paragraphs of what you're working on. And now they're feeling like they're buying. Or sometimes I got them involved also on chapter 2, the mindset part of the book. I actually sent out a survey to my social media group, and I said, I need some entrepreneurs and I need people who aspire to own their businesses, and I'm going to send them a questionnaire, and I'd like you guys to be involved in this book research. So I sent them these information. I think it was like 6 questions of, what would they have done differently? What kept them from starting? All these questions, these general questions that people always have that they use as excuses to keep from starting a business or maybe even writing a book, right? Mm-hmm. But you'll find that there's a commonality between all these people. And what I wanted to share, that it was something that was relatable, that everybody has these same thoughts. And there were some highly, highly successful entrepreneurs that replied, but they all had the exact same thoughts in the beginning. They didn't know enough. They didn't have time. They didn't have money. They had all these challenges to overcome. They're worried about what other people would say or think about them.
Yep.
The fear of rejection, fear of failure, all these things always surface. But it was really great to have that validated by data that I could put into a book and make a chapter on that to really show people that are reading this book, hey, man, I thought the same thing. And then you start to feel like, okay, I can relate. So here's the reasons. Then I start providing all these answers and reasons, like to not use those as excuses, and encourage people and empower them to take the next step. So these are all things that you involve your social media community in the process of the book if you can somehow. And then again, there's more buy-in. Now they feel like they're involved in the project as well. And you just keep doing this as you go. It took me 5 months to write the book, little by little. I mean, we had vacations and life happens and things like that. But I had a firm date. I said I wanted to be finished by the manuscript, which is basically your text copy. I wanted it to be done by May. And I started in December, so it worked out perfectly.
Wow.
And honestly, if you guys out there have heard of the Parkinson's principle or the Parkinson's law. So the way the gist of this Parkinson's law goes is the project will expand to fill the amount of time that you allow it.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're right. So if I want to paint the deck and I only give myself 2 days, it'll get done in 2 days, right?
Man. So if you tell yourself you're going to do it in 5 months and you schedule it that way, you'll do it in 5 months. If you tell yourself you're going to do it in a year, you're going to do it in a year. So you want to make sure you come up with a realistic time frame that's really reasonable, that you can work with, and then set that hard date. So that gives you a kind of a timeline of your marketing. So along the way, I'm doing this, and then when we got the 16 cover designs, that became another way for them to be interested and buy into that, because then we had like a contest, like, hey guys, we got these cover designs. We have a general idea of which ones we are in our top 5, but we want your input. We want to see like what you guys think about these. So you involve them in your social media, and now at least people are chiming in and laughing at some of the covers, because some of them were purposely funny, and then some of them like were really good. And you kind of get this feedback, and those build a huge algorithm, because anytime people are responding to your social media post, it always gets bumped to the top of the page. So then your other people that are following, they join on Facebook. Anything that's got a high amount of engagement, which is likes and comments and responses, chances are they're going to see that too. So you're building marketing as you go, and you're starting to build this momentum towards the book. So it's very powerful. You got to create almost like rhetorical questions and things like this on your social media that will make people engage, make people respond. And you always want to take the time to go back and respond and try to start almost like miniature conversations within your conversation, because that's going to build the boost. It's going to get a lot of eyeballs at that point. And if you just maintain this kind of momentum throughout your entire writing process, by the time you do have the launch week, it's going to be a hit, because everybody's been anticipating, they've bought in, they've been involved. So there's a lot of things you can do before the book even comes out.
Sure. So your fans are all psyched up.
Yeah.
Well, it's a win-win situation for both of you. You, because you're getting followers and input about your book, and the audience members, because who doesn't want, they're part of the community. And it's fun. It's exciting to see, oh, this person's writing a book. You're part of you feel like you're part of the process. And that has to be, very fun also.
Yeah, exactly. And then when they finally get it in their hands, they're like, wow, I kind of had something to do with this.
Yeah,
and then
I picked this cover.
Right.
Yeah, I voted on that cover.
Yeah,
or
right.
And that blossoms into them sharing photos of the book and sharing it with their own network, and it just kind of goes viral from there. So you can imagine, like I asked people, hey, just post a photo of the book with something like in front of your car, because I had a lot of car people that are friends of mine, and it started this trend. I think I got over 100 photos that got submitted
Wow.
of my
That's
book
cool.
with cars.
That's great. Yeah, to get people to actually do.
Walk,
it's one
walk out
thing
in the
to
driveway and do it. Yeah.
It's one thing to click a button,
Yeah,
but it's another.
Some of them were really hilarious. They're like this really, like they'll have like the junkiest car in their driveway, and they'll go out there and purposely take it in front of that for fun. But it's like, hey, that's a cool photo, and it builds a conversation again. So it also gives you. It kind of gives you the social aspect of your book, the social testimonial aspect. So when you do start to promote your book when it's out, now you have the social buy-in, because you have all these photos and people sending things in and reviews. And another thing I think a lot of people don't do, it kind of goes back to the ask again, is whenever someone say, hey, I ordered your book, and I would just ask, it's like, hey, really appreciate that. Thank you for the support. Please give me a 5-star review on Amazon. That will really help the ranking in my book. And you have to be strategic when you ask that, because you have to give them a reason why you're asking them to do that. Because if you give them the reason and a real simple just direction, like, hey, can you give me a 5-star? It's going to help the ranking in my book, and it'll get in front of more people so they can enjoy it. They're going to do that. So I got about, I guess, 60 5-star reviews now. Like every review I've had on the book is a 5-star review. And it's just simple, because most people, they just don't give reviews. They just don't. They even if they love it, they just never go back to give a review. It's like extra. It's like a hassle. But you find a lot of people, if they have a complaint, they're more than willing to go be vocal about complaining about something. So while that buzz is going on during your launch week, anytime somebody responds to one of your posts, always take the time that moment to go respond directly to them. And it's basically a way of acknowledging that they've made a comment, which is great because they took the time out to do that and they care. But then just go, hey, appreciate that. Leave me the 5-star and give them a reason why, and then they'll always go do that. So it's sold over 1,000 copies of the book in the first week.
Wow.
Wow.
So, and I asked everybody that replied that I knew that had a hand. I would just ask them, just very politely. And I got 50. I think the first week I had 50 reviews the first week, which is incredible, because there's books out there for years and years and years. They don't even have 50 like bad reviews yet.
Right. So jumping ahead, what happened 2 weeks before the launch and 1 week before the launch?
That was the fun part. So as with anything, you got to get it listed on Amazon. So we started out with paperback and the Kindle format on Amazon. And it was actually listed on their website about a week and a half before my launch date. And I had to keep it a secret, because I don't want if you're going to go for a bestseller push, you got to have a lot of momentum and a lot of activity at once. It's like an acceleration that Amazon rewards you, like this acceleration of massive activity and purchases on about 3 or 4 day window, it seems like, from the people I was hiring to help market. So you can't tell anybody it's out there. You don't want them to go search for it. You don't want them to buy it. You just kind of have to keep it quiet, let them know it's coming. It'll be on Amazon. And you keep telling them this date. And from what I learned from looking at different book launches, it seems like Tuesday is the best day to launch. So like a Tuesday through Friday. You guys have probably heard this from more than me, but maybe you can validate that. But it worked out for me.
Great.
Monday, everybody's busy. Everybody's at work on Monday, and they're just busy and they're catching up. And then Tuesday, they finally get a little bit of a break. And then a lot of people are surfing the internet at work on a Tuesday. So
that makes perfect sense.
I had no one to hit them. So I got up I think I did a live video at 6 a.m. on that Tuesday morning. And people that know me, they're like, what the heck is Tony going live at 6 a.m.? It must be something important. Let me see while I'm getting ready for work or ready. As I was trying to get them before they were doing their commute time. And, I did a live videos. I basically introduced the book, let them know where to find it, and I was purposely targeting that group because my book is, again, for busy professionals who want to start something on the side. So I think I even made a comment where, hey guys, I'm looking for people just like you. They're up there getting ready for work. You got a hard day ahead. I'm trying to get you ahead of life and doing things that you enjoy. And I'm doing this purposely early because the people that are the get rich quick type people, they're still sleeping. They're not going to get up till noon anyway, so I don't want to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So you use really strategic marketing for your ideal reader.
And then that day you told everybody the book was available.
Yes.
And then it was off to the races.
Yeah, and then I begged them to buy the 99-cent version, the Kindles, even if they wanted the paperback. It's like, look, I'm never ask you guys for anything, but I'm going to ask you to spend 99 cents at least. I mean, if you want to get the paperback, and so the first week and a half, unintentionally, the first week, I set the price as low as possible on Amazon, which was for a paperback was $3.64, basically zero profit, and for Kindle it was 99 cents. Because there's strategies with that too. If you want to get a bestseller's push, you don't want to give it away for free, because that ranks you on the free platform. And you can get a bestsellers list free, but as soon as you add any kind of price to it, all that momentum disappears and your ranking just starts over again. So now you got to start all over again from the paid side. So there's different strategies to get that. And 99 cents is basically free. And anyone that likes you and supports you, they're not going to be worried about 99 cents. So most of the people end up buying both copies.
Great.
Sure, but that sounds like it would hurt. You're putting all this effort and work into the book, and you're paying an editor, and then all of a sudden you're releasing the book and making zero.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do that. I mean, to them, getting the bestseller title means a lot, and that's a strategy. I know that Chandler Bolt, he's got a book on book launches, and that's the kind of strategy he employs and teaches his students to do it free. And then he goes like $1, then $2, and that's kind of a. I don't want to do that. I probably would have been like, it would have felt false to me, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say, but you do strategy with the smaller subcategories. So we actually had it in like a business law subcategory to start it off to see if we can get number one in that category. And honestly, within an hour, I was already number one bestseller in that small category. And so now here's the cool thing about Amazon. During that launch day, if you're working with somebody that's had that experience, you start to see your Amazon book ranking, like your overall ranking across all Amazon books. And it's a number, and you can see that in the, I guess, the details section of your book of the listing. Mm-hmm. And so now you can start to look in larger subcategories and look at the ones that you're competing against, and you can see what the book ranking is for that number one book in that category. And then you go, you know what, I'm going to go jump into that one. I'm going to steal number one from that guy. So you already know. And Amazon took about 5 or 6 hours for them to make that transfer, but it's a real time thing. So you can say, hey, my book ranking is 3,000 now. And number one in this subcategory over here, that it's with something that my book can fit in, which became, I think we did it 3 hops. We did 3 hops, ended up in the business marketing, which is a really large category. And I knew that I was already going to take number one as soon as it got, swapped onto the post. So, we basically create the subcategory, redirected it, and 4 or 5 hours later, it shows up on Amazon in that category, and it's already number one. So you can basically go and steal number one spots if you know your book ranking. And my book actually made it to number 515 in all of Amazon, which is
crazy. Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, that's huge.
Crazy. And like in the giant, and I was actually going to make a play for the largest category that it could fit in, which would have been self-help. And it actually made it to number 11 in the self-help category. It never made it all the way to the top, but it made it to number 11.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
Crazy amount of book. For a self-published book that nobody even knows the author. Yeah, it blew me away how fast it grew.
How many categories or subcategories can you be listed in?
You can list, I believe, each version of your book into 2 different subcategories. So the strategy there is not to use the same, I guess, base category.
Sure.
So like you'd want to do, like, for me, I did like business, and then I did self-help. So there are 2 different categories, 2 major categories. And then there's subcategories. You can usually go 3 deep down into each of those. So I always pick two that are kind of smaller originally. If you're trying to get that bestseller, try to pick the smallest subcategory that you can to hopefully take number one in the small one, and then you can just keep bumping it up to get to the bigger ones.
And then the idea of being number one is bragging rights?
Yes, definitely bragging rights. So I've learned that only 1% of books make it to a number one of any list.
Wow.
Well, it sounds like you've had a very fun and rewarding experience.
Definitely. It's been a great thing. It's opened up a lot of doors, and I knew this going with the book. It's a way of establishing authority, but it opens up many doors that are invisible until you have a book. And I think that's the number one reason that people should have a book. I mean, here we are talking on this podcast with you guys, get to meet you, Leah and Matt, and this wouldn't have existed without a book. So that's just another example.
Mm-hmm. Right. It certainly does open up the doors.
So what about marketing after you're number one on Amazon? Are you still marketing?
Yes, I'm actually going to push the marketing on this book for a solid year. I've also learned that a lot of the books that make the New York Times bestsellers list and then the ones that sustain at the top of Amazon, basically they go for about a year campaign where they're really pushing it hard and keeping it out there, because really all it takes is this book to get into the hands of a couple influencers with giant networks, and the whole thing can turn around on you. So it's just being, if you're going to spend 5 months writing it, you better spend at least 5 months marketing it, right?
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
It's like, why would you give up? And so the bestseller status is a great way to help market that as well, because now you kind of goes back to the social buy-in. It shows that a lot of people have bought it, they're interested in it. Again, that opens up a whole other set of doors that didn't exist before, and you just gotta push it. So I'd say for the launch week, the number one way to market that I found was live videos, and I think that a lot of people that are in the marketing space regarding anything you're marketing or selling, if you're not willing to do live videos and promote it, you're missing out on the number one way to get to the most amount of eyeballs that's still free. So it's
absolutely. I mean, they show up on Facebook. I mean, as soon as one of your friends is live, Facebook lets you know. You're sitting there scrolling through, waiting in line for something, and then it says Joe is live. You're like, whoa, let's see what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I started planning for podcasts and interviews, and I was on the radio here in Houston a couple weeks ago, and I was planning for all this stuff a year in advance. I actually joined Toastmasters about a year ago to get better at public speaking, because I was going to prepare, and it was all about, hey, I knew I had a story to share. I wanted to be more confident, more polished at speaking about it, and also wanted to create my own podcast to build my audience.
Great.
So it was like stepping stones. Like originally it was like, hey, I got this book I want to write. I need to get better at speaking. How long is that going to take? 6 months to a year to become a better speaker. So I started preparing back then before I even started writing the book. So it's a long strategy, but anybody can do it if they're willing to really devote the time and dedicate themselves to doing it.
Right. So you were talking about getting the book in front of the people so that maybe it could get on the New York Times bestseller list. Are you sending out copies of the book?
Yes, absolutely. I actually quoted several influential people in the book and referenced several other books that I enjoy within my book, because I know that as an author in a self-help and a business type category book, I've seen these people collaborate pretty well, because they've seen their own success. They're okay sharing the information if they enjoy the information with their readership or listenership. And I sent copies out to every one of the people that I referenced in the book.
Great.
Excellent. Great idea. You also mentioned about getting an interview on a radio station. How did you go about getting that?
It was actually just someone on my social media space that had the radio show, and they had a business financial management company that does a 1-hour show every day in Houston on lunch break. And they reached out and contacted me, and they said, hey, we're teaching our listenership to create new revenue streams, and your book would be a perfect topic for that.
So, yeah.
That is nice.
Said, would you be interested in meeting our listeners? I was like, absolutely.
Sure.
So
that is very cool that they reached out to you. That is excellent.
Are you doing any personal appearances?
Yes, actually, after we got to meet, they're going to host a corporate sponsored book signing in next month, and they're going to do some marketing for me, and they have a reach of about 35,000 listeners. So they're going to help do this and help sell their event as well, because they're trying to build their client base to show up at these events. And we agreed that they're going to buy X amount of copies of the book just to put me in front of their audience. And that's the kind of things that open up. Like, none of this would ever existed without a book. So anybody that's listening to this that has some kind of a knowledge or a skill or authority, you really got to get your book out there, because otherwise these opportunities don't ever happen.
Sure. And what a contact to make, huh?
Yeah.
That was a good contact.
But here's one of those fears that you were talking about. So I think to myself, oh, well, I have some knowledge on X, Y, or Z, but don't 10,000 people have that same knowledge across the United States? I mean, even if it's something, a little bit niche, it still seems like I'm just one of 10,000 who might have that same information. Why should I write a book?
I answer that question much like the personal branding question that it is. So let's say this thing. Let's say, Matt, you and I read something from the exact same script, and maybe we're doing it on video. I guarantee there's going to be a group of people that listen that love the way you do it, and they love you and they hate me.
Right.
And the other way, there's always going to be a group from that group that loves the way I do it and they hate you. So it's kind of, no matter what you say, you're going to resonate with a certain amount of people.
Okay.
And you really have to understand that even if you're saying things that are similar, you may have some quirkiness to you, or something that's endearing, or your voice, or how you look, or whatever it is. You got to understand that you're going to resonate with some crowd. Your crowd is going to find you. And if you start looking at it in the basis of fear, what's more important, your message or the fear of not sharing that message?
Sure, I'd rather people hear my message.
Exactly.
Well, I think you've been a great guest.
Right.
We learned a lot today.
I'll say.
Yeah. So what's the best way for our audience members to get in touch with you?
If you're looking for the book, you can look on Amazon, Side Hustle Millionaire, or you can visit a website that I created, sidehustlebook.net. My personal webpage is 365driven.com, and you can reach me there, or social media. You can look up me on Instagram at 365driven, or my Facebook business page is also 365driven.
Excellent. We'll have all those in the show notes. And we didn't ask what if you had some advice for somebody who's writing a book or thinking about writing a book, although you certainly have given us lots of advice.
Sure.
But do you have like one, ending nugget that you might want to share?
I'd say for anyone that's considering writing a book, don't be afraid of the process. A lot of people think they're not very good writers, but here's the thing that they don't really understand because they haven't done the research. But most books actually are written in an 8th grade readership level. Mm-hmm. So you don't really want to purposely come off as like a college professor in the way you're speaking, unless that's what your book is about. So you try to write your book as like you're having a conversation. And last time I checked, almost anybody's good at having a conversation. So think about like having a conversation with your ideal reader, sitting across the table, drinking a glass of wine or having a beer, just at dinner. And if you write in that style, it's going to resonate and it's going to attract a lot of people. So you don't really have to be some brilliant writers. Never discount your writing ability.
Right. That is great advice. Thank you, Tony.
Well, Tony, once again, you were a very good guest. I appreciate that you shared all these tips with us and our listeners. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, Leah. Matt, good to meet you, and hope we cross paths at some point.
Yes.
I hope so. Thanks for listening to the Author Inside You podcast.
Please share this episode with one of your friends. And until next time,
right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.